Morning everybody. You've seen the thumbnail. We're actually in a bathroom ensuite that we've got a little bit of an issue with, and if you can hear in the background, it sounds like we've got a waterfall going. There's a bit of a slight issue with the shower that won't turn off. Now, this bathroom's got, we probably not see it too well, we've got very flaky paint in the top angles, around the window, and just generally, it's not been painted very well before. So what we're doing is, you've seen previous videos where I've used the Glickstone fungicidal paint, which works phenomenally. I've used it on the flat renovation that was in that playlist there, so 2 links there you can have a look at. Now, the reason I'm using this in here, because we haven't really got a mould problem yet, but particularly with that constant dripping of the shower that needs to be fixed, and when we've done, no doubt the plumber will be back and trying to fix that. What we don't want is build up of condensation and then we get in a mould issue in the angles and things like that. There is an extractor fan that I've just turned off because I don't want the background noise of a waterfall behind me or behind the camera, plus the Echo and the Bunnymen. Can you remember those? Yeah. Echo, and we've also have the fan Echo water dripping. Yeah, it's going to be annoying. It's annoying. So I'm going to talk you through. I'm not going to make a big video out of how to paint walls, because you've seen how I paint walls, and how you paint walls is probably slightly different to me, but painting walls is quite simple. But let's just talk through what the process is with stuff like this, because where the flaky paint is, I don't know whether you can just see it just there. Just get a scraper, literally go round, and I'll bring that in so you can just see it a bit more. Can you see that? Now just put paint down. Where we've got paint there, there's flaky, just go round with your flat blade scraper, and literally go round and scrape any loose off. Once that loose has been taken off and you've raked out any slight cracks, any imperfections on the wall, you might want to, and you will do, give it a little bit of a sand, just to give it a slight key. Now you only need something like, I've got some worn 120. Just give it a light sand, just to make sure there's nothing just still flaky, and then get a duster brush, dust it off. Once you've done all that, you'll be ready to get some treatment onto it. Now, to start with, I've probably missed this bit out, but if you have got moulding issues, this is a 2-part system. You can use the Fungus Shield sterilising solution. This is a 5:1 mixed ratio. Now, I won't be using it in here because I have no mould issues. If you are using this, it's a 5:1 mixed ratio, and if you're using all of that, you put 1 of these to 5 litres of water, but 5:1 mixed ratio. You wash your surface down, make sure it's all cleaned down nicely. You can either do that with a sprayer, you can use a cloth, you can use a brush. Once it's dried, then you can be painting over it, but I won't be using that today. That was touched on in that last video. But what I'll be doing is, or what Brian will probably more likely be doing, prepping this room out, scraping off, giving a little bit of sand over the surface. And to start with, what do we do without Zinsser products? Now, we'll get peel stop on all those bad edges, and we'll go over those edges, bind them down. Peel stop is not PVA. If anybody says to me they use PVA on bare plaster, the red flags come out that I can clearly tell you've had no formal training. I'm saying this with a straight face. No formal training or even been to college, because you would know you do not put PVA, whether it be thin down or not, onto bare plaster. And it's all to do with the alkali surfaces and whether you can put anything on an alkali surface and whether it reacts. It's by the by, but I'm telling you, don't please use PVA. Peel stop is not PVA. Peel stop can go onto bare plaster surfaces because it's alkali resisting, just like emulsion is. Yes. Emulsion is alkali resistant as well. So let's get back onto it. What we're going to do is They'll all be scraped down, there'll be a little bit of sandpaper going over it. We'll peel stop those areas. Once the peel stop has dried and fully dried and we're happy with it, I'm just looking around certain areas, there's not lots in it, it's mainly in these corners up at the top, around the window and a little bit near the extractor fan. Once we're happy that's all dried, use your chosen fine surface filler. Use the filler of choice and just lightly skim out those areas to stop the mapping. And the mapping is the actual fat, thick edge that the paint film is leaving when you scrape back. Gently float those out so you've got a smoother surface. Once that's dried, then you'll be giving it a light sand. Your light sand might be, again, some used sandpaper, 120, or you might have the Gold Flex, and a lot of people have purchased these off the Amazon links that I have below in the descriptions. The Gold Flex pads, the 150 is very fine, that when you get your fine surface filler dry, you can just sand over it lightly, dust it off, and then it's ready to go for painting. Now you're going to say, what do we do with painting? Right, I'm going to move on to that bit. Put that down. We've got the Glickstone paint. Now the Glickstone paint is a recognised product that the National Landlord Association use, or recommend, should I say. Many councils and companies that do rental properties, housing associations now use this product because it can be used in bathrooms, kitchens, hallways, bedrooms, anywhere you like. It can be mixed in multitude of different colours or multiple of different, lots of different colours. But it is a recognised product that it's now called the National Residential Landlord Association, actually, I won't say endorse, but they do recommend people to use because it does stop your black mould. It says anti-mould and black spot paint, but this is a product you can use on these surfaces, and that's why we're using it. Now, going back to your bare surfaces, if you were needing this to be used as a primer, thin it down 10%. Just read the instructions. It says thin it down 10%, and you can go over those areas that you put filler on just to prime it out with 10% mix of water to this, just to thin it down. Once that's done, you can give it 2 coats of this, allow it to dry between coats, and it takes about 4 hours depending on your conditions, whether it's going to dry or not. But within 5 days it's properly curing and actually a proper hard surface. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And I'll put some photos at the end of when we've done it, because I don't want to show you how to paint because it's watching paint dry. So just to recap, your flakiness, your scraping, you're giving it a little bit of a sand, you're going to be using some peel stop to bind it and seal those edges. You're going to get your fine surface filler, and there's multiple, there's the Tripette, there's the Prestone, you've got loads of different fillers you can use as a fine surface filler to float those out. Use your filler, let that dry, give that a light sand over, spot prime, any bare filler, it's always a good idea to spot prime, which you'll be using this, 10%, some of this, 10% water, spot prime those areas, let that dry, and then 2 coats on the full room, allowing at least 4 hours between coats, and then you're good to go. And that should give you, well, it says up to, it says in 20 years never had a failure, so it's probably a good product to actually be using more than you probably are at the moment, because you probably don't know anything about it. But yeah, let's finish on this now. I'll put some photos in at the end when we've done it, and then you'll see actually how good it can look. This is going to be in a matte finish. You can get it in a satin finish. Personally, I prefer the matte finish because it does actually get a nicer opacity coverage than a satin. Personal preference. But yeah, I'll see you at the end. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Hello everybody. I've come back to you, and I was going to just insert some photos at the end. Let me open the door, it's got echoing. I was going to insert some photos at the end of the actual finished job, but I want to just recap on this because sometimes jobs don't always go to plan. And originally, the plan was the flaky paint around the window and on the ceiling. It'd be a case of scrape it off, peel stop. We'd do a bit of filler over it, touch them all in, give it a coat, 2 coats, job's a good one. But Brian's been on this job for the last 3 days. don't panic, he's not been on it full time for 3 days, but it's been a 3-day process, because when he started scraping off all that flaky paint around the window reveal, that came off nicely, just scraped off to a tight edge. But when he went up onto the ceiling, which you'll see up there, those flaky pieces just about there started shelling off to the point that he stripped the whole ceiling. And you're going to say, why did it strip? And the reason was because when this was newly plastered not that many years ago, nobody had put a thin wash coat of anything over it to do as a sealer before they put the paints on. So what Brian's had to do, a little bit extra to the job really, he's had to strip the ceiling, give it a bit of sand down, a bit of a fill, a bit of a peel stop where it needed it on the edges, and then he gave it a wash coat, and he used some thinned down Glickstone paint, which was fine. We've used it as a primer sealer to that bare. Now, once he'd got that on, then he could do some fine surface filling that needed it. Those were sanded down, spot primed, and then he'd had 2 coats over that. But once that second coat had gone on, and there's I think it's 4 hours difference between first and second coating, you know, it's a 4-hour recoat time. We looked at it at the end of the day and we said, that's just a little bit grinny, because you got the bare plaster primer colour, you know, you got the bare plaster colour still grinning through white, which, you know what my issue is with whites, opacity and body of paint's not there. So what Brian did the following day, which was obviously the 3rd day, which is today, he's just gone over that ceiling again, and I'll show you, can't really. He's gone over that ceiling again with a 3rd full coat. So this job now is just, it's like a bathroom ensuite for a king and a queen, really. It's just had that much paint on it now, quality paint. But what I wanted to say is, these walls previously, when he did the filling and he did the bit of sanding down, instead of just spot priming, he wasn't happy with how the paints were on the surface. It was like a vinyl silk. So what he did, while he'd got a thin down wash coat for the bare plaster, he just went over these walls just with virtually a bit of a wash coat, just to give a bit of a base. And he did notice that when he came back to give the first and second coat, because these have only had 2 top coats, he did notice how much easier it was to paint over, going over the thin down very first coat over these walls that had originally had either vinyl silk or soft sheen. So that being said, this job is now completed. The woodwork's been finished with Scuffex, which is Benjamin Moore. We've sanded down, we've spot primed where we needed it. Any edges have been caulked with the Red Devil caulk. We've caulked up round the window to get a neat edge. And just this last thing, this afternoon, Brian has gone round, and I'm not saying he's cleaned the mirror or anything like that, but he has gone around with a damp sponge and just cleaned up any of the last little bits of flaky paint that had literally come off that ceiling. Now, if you can hear this, you can hear that drip, 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 drip. It's Japanese prisoner of war. Am I allowed to say that? Probably not allowed to say that, but it's a water torture. That shower, and I'll spin it round if I can get in it. That shower has had a leak on it since we were here. Just a drip, drip, drip. Now I've tried to turn it off as tight as I possibly can. That's tight as that's as tight as nun's knickers, and I don't think I'm allowed to say that either. So we've not been able to stop that dripping. So mother of invention is necessity. I've put a black bin line around it and put a hole in the black bin liner at the bottom. I'll say it again. I put a hole in the black bin liner at the bottom and then connected up some of my bagging and made a bit of a funnel. And then outside, I don't know if you can see it, a bit of drain pipe. So that feeds any dripping water into the grate that's in the, can you see that? Down there. So on the second day, that shower area, this area was actually nicely dry, whereas before when we came in there was water splashed everywhere. So we've actually reduced that humidity, we've reduced that moisture in the air while we've been working. So yeah, we'll leave that because we don't want to create any damp in the air while we're doing other bits and pieces. But I've got to say, Glickstone paint, really good. It's going to do what it needs to do in this bathroom, which was stop those slight, it wasn't mouldy, but we got issues with condensation and stuff, and Glickstone paint, the Fungus Shield paint, is ideal for that. So please check out the original videos that are in that playlist where I touch on that product, and I'll say thanks for listening to me. It's probably gone on a little bit more than I thought it would do, and we probably hit a 20-minute video, but doesn't matter, because every video that's a long one, obviously will probably get some adverts in it, and every advert gets me 0.002 pence into the kitty for that Porsche. So I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for listening, and watch the videos at the end.